Welcome. Good morning. Good day, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us in conversation today with Create a World. We're so happy to be here once again in our weekly time to listen in to one another and explore what's rising in the field as we are now really beginning to enter 2025. For those of you that have not been in the creative world space with us, we extend a warm welcome to come in and enjoy as if you're eavesdropping on a conversation. Here at Create a World, we as collaborators pay attention to how we have conversation that brings us in connection to ourselves and with creation, the source that we animate from. And we pay, in particular, we pay attention to the principles of the Tantra and the Mat. The Tantra being how we live in a co-creative relationship with the so above, unseen mystery of life, along with the so below physical world and all of the experiences that rise in our daily experience of who we are and how we find that magic in our lives, and how we start to notice that everything is a part of everything else, and everything is in its own place in an organic way. And in having your place, having its place, we move to the next greater whole with each breath, with each movement, with each way we pay attention to the movement of life. And that brings us into a more cohesive, coherent experience in remembering ourselves as an expression of creation, an expression of what sources us. So each week we're paying attention to different ways in which we are expressing and experiencing this. And because it's the beginning of 2025, last week, as the whole collaborator team, almost, Lori was attending to other things last week. So she's on with me today. Thank you for joining me, Lori. And we want to talk about how we've been experiencing the rise of our like internal spark that animates our lives. And there's some ways in which that internal spark is always moving us. And then maybe this time of year, or maybe it's other times in our lives where we're reigniting that spark. We're finding a new reset for ourselves. And I know for me, I'm in a new reset. I'm reigniting myself and how I'm moving in my expression, not only in myself, but in the world. And so I'm excited to share a little bit about how that conversation arises. And I'll wait to do that. I just want to welcome you and remind you that we do have a chat. We're working with a little technical edge to see if we can have access to the chat in YouTube and respond to your rising expressions. And also, we do have a Facebook page. So you could respond there, and we will attempt within either one of those parameters to bring you into the conversation with us in our technical capacity to do so. So I just take a moment. I'd love to take a moment and bring your energy into the room, Lori, and share just kind of a set for yourself in the moment.
Thanks. It's such a pleasure to be here since I missed last week. And I'm loving the imagery of the internal flame, the pilot light, if you will. And as you were speaking, I was sitting with and what was rising is the capacity to always have that pilot light lit. Like I feel like my pilot light is always lit, and there's the varying degrees of the flame. So, like you said, as to reignite it, is it necessarily reigniting the pilot light or just building that flame to burn hotter or burn away impurities, bring in more life, like all along the spectrum. And um that was like a huge aha for me, just realizing like my pilot light is always lit because there's an aspect or an access that I have in relationship to creation always. And sometimes it's more illuminating or more potent, and other times it's kind of like in the background, but it's always there. So I appreciate the way you introed us, and it just shifted something for myself. So, wow, thank you.
And that's kind of interesting as you were talking about that, a couple of different things were kind of showing up for me. Um, One is that from my yoga tradition, we talk about they use the term amrita, the nectar of life, which from the pineal gland drips down through the top of the roof of the mouth and down into the energy of the solar plexus. And when I think about my spark, my pilot light always lit, that's my solar plexus. And so is my connection from source so
Okay.
like the range of vitality of it, is it fully absorbing and dropping into my solar plexus to
Yeah.
to
I love you too.
expand and illuminate.
I'm on mute. I'm not participating in the
We hear you, Deb.
Yeah, we do hear you. So you thought you were on mute, and so now you can mute yourself. Thank you. Talk about eavesdropping, right?
I mean, yeah,
Isn't
yeah.
that how we do it? I love that. I love that sometimes we are in a magic and don't know we're in a magic, or we're creating a new kind of magic. So I love how we can pay attention to
Yeah.
the ways in which we are present to ourselves and in our lives. So it's all good. It's all good. Um, so that was one of the pieces of how you brought that awareness to me of the Amrita, nectar of life. And then the other way is a story that my yoga mentor would tell us when we would be in retreat together. And I love the gist of the story that speaks to it without telling the whole story. The gist of the story is when you see a window and there might be some dust, and it might be a little layer of dust, or it might be like really, really dirty, and you can't even see out the window, right? That can be that sense of the spark getting expressed, whether the pilot light is really low because the dust is so thick that we can't feel, we can't see, we can't remember and express from source, from creation. We can't hear the nudges. We can't operate in that deeper alignment. And so the ways in which we clear the window. It might be clearing the window of our thinking to be in alignment with thinking creation thoughts, the unity of our relationship. It might be in how we tend to our bodies and giving our bodies the time and energy to be fully optimally functioning as best we can. It might be our emotional landscape and how we are navigating the flow of emotion through our lives, through our experiences. And is it a sense of stability and resiliency? Right. So it's like, what's fogging it up? And that is like that degree that you were talking about of the pilot light. It's always lit until our last breath, and then it goes somewhere else fully lit, right? But how are we igniting it or reigniting it when we notice it's pretty dusty?
Well, I love that you say that, because as you were talking about the window, I'm like, well, are you like a finger person on the window and just enough so you can just like see this much? Or are you like, I have to clean the whole window in order for something to rise? And it's very I can't think of the word I want to attach to this, but it is that determination to be with, whether it's a little crack that you're seeing through or the fullness of it. How can you be with either of those experiences in that rhythmic balance of all those centers that you were talking about, emotionally, mentally, physically? And I relate to all of that through my Tai Chi and my Qigong. And that's bringing, very much like the yoga tradition, how do we connect to that nectar of life that's within all of us? And how, if we choose to really potentize and really tap into the, like, I don't know, the depth of that life, if you will. We're all alive right now. We're breathing. Whoever's watching us and, in conversation with us at this moment, we are alive. And what is the degree of your aliveness, and what are you choosing for moving, this moment and forward into the year? And it might change from day to day. And it's interesting because yesterday, I'm in Ohio, and this time of the year, the weather is just, you never know what you're going to get. And yesterday was this bright, like, spectacular sun. It was so bright, it like hurt my eyes off of the glare of the snow. That's how bright it was. I'm like, I'm staying in the cocoon of my house because of the brightness. And I'm like, oh, I'm relating that to the pilot light, because I looked out and I'm like, oh, I got lighter, I got cheerier,
Mm.
and it was a lot. So it's like, how do you find the balance in it and like love yourself through it all? Yeah.
Ah, I'm just taking a moment to pause and feel the richness. We're 15 minutes into a conversation already, like having its own flavors.
Yeah.
And I love how life brings us to each moment, that there's a part of me that loves the mystery of, I don't know what I'm going to say next.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to grab my attention And in that attention, what my response is. And I do know that if I'm willing to be present to whatever is coming up, then my pilot light, my spark in life is following that. Right? Or I'm following that spark of what is interesting in this moment. And that may be clear in my thinking mind of what I'm paying attention to, and it may not. Sometimes it's that feeling. It's that I don't know why I'm going here. I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I'll share like a simple way in which that movement with creation, I find that spark engaging me in life. The day before, it was, or on Wednesday, it was after I do my yoga practice, I'm going to go gather vegetables. I need to go get my fruits and vegetables. And I found myself thinking, well, I have my basic list. I found myself just pulling different things in to the cart, and I had a full cart of all this stuff. And I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I buying so many different ones right now? I don't have to buy them all in one trip. I can go back anytime I need to. I have that luxury to have access to them at any moment. And but yet I kept feeling this. My system was like, no, buy these two, and I had all of these different fruits and vegetables. And then yesterday morning, before I was getting ready to do some work stuff, I got a surprise phone call from a friend of mine who'd been in California and had evacuated out unexpectedly due to the nature of the fires, and was having to divert their direction due to the nature of the snow weather pattern across the heartland. And I get this phone call out of nowhere. We're coming through where you live in Albuquerque. It would love to see you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, of course. And you will stay for dinner. And you will stay the night if that's what's called for to take care of you on your journey home. So immediately I said, oh, I have everything I need.
Yeah.
And that's that expression that comes through. That for me, that was almost like part of this reigniting myself is that deeper listening. And as my yoga teacher mentor used to say, dare to follow what creation is calling upon you. So if creation's telling me to put more fruits and vegetables into my basket, then just dare to say yes and see why. It might show up immediately, it might show up the next day that you say, oh, thank you. I'm so glad I'm in my relationship. And so then that's how I know my spark is really ignited and burning bright in that sense. So I could nourish them in the evening, and then I could send them on their journey today with goodies to boot to take care of them along the way. And that feeds me.
Yeah.
And so I know I'm in what I would think of as right relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, as you were speaking, my whole body just like had this huge internal smile. And as you were talking, I'm like, yeah, I'm like tracking right along, right along. And what rose for me was the when we do take that moment to be with creation and just do for the sake of that internal listening, life usually works out in that easeful, like you were saying earlier, that congruency, that coherency, every, that fluidity of you being with creation, eh, creation being with you being with your friends, with like it's all like working together. And you were resourced to do it, instead of like, oh, I don't know if I can have people over my house, that other end of it. And that, wow, who doesn't want more of that? So it's in those sacred practices, however you define that for yourself, that creates that internal resource that we can always tap into, that resiliency to keep moving along, whether the pilot light is really dim and needs a little spark, or if it's maybe overflowing and it needs to dim a little bit, in that balance of just being with our normal way of being on earth. It's like,
Mm.
how do we listen? How do we listen and bring that listening into the fullness of life, of our humanness? We're human, but there's more than just these bones. We are creation. We're human in creation like we're in it together. And balancing it. Like I'm constantly in that play of balancing the pilot light, if you will. And uh some days it shines brightly, other days there's communities that help spark it. There's, nature, there's so many, a good book, just being in silence, there's so many different ways to be in that flow with the frequency of what is happening deep, deep, deep in our essence of being. And I like to play there, and I'm challenged and scared to play there too. I'm the both end of that, definitely.
Oh, that would be, I'm kind of drawn into the challenged and scared part. Like, what does that look like, feel like for you? Because I can imagine there's some people out there that say, yeah, I get what you're saying, but I don't really like, what's the first step?
Hmm. For me, the first step is just being willing, being willing to be in something different than what you are used to. And for me, that is easily coined or termed like my habitual self. And how do I balance in my grief recovery stuff? They call them STERBs, short-term energy relieving behaviors. So what do I do to stop either my mind going, my emotions from going, or what is it I do to make that stop, thinking that it will create rest and relaxation, when really it's just like covering up what's the habit or the system, or what my system's trying to tell me. It's kind of numbing that out or quieting it in a way that I feel as if I can move forward. But it's so much more alive, so much more beautiful when there's community that we can like step out of or become more aware of, am I utilizing a stirb right now? Or am I um like willing to like shift that in any way? And stirbs can go into like on the other end, they're an addiction, you know. So there's like the, again, it's that wide range of where are you on the spectrum, and ultimately we're all of it, you know. That's the beautiful thing about the Tai Chi, the yin yang. We are the Tai Chi. We are all of it.
You know, you really connected a dot for me, and let me see if this fits for you. When you were talking about a habituated way of tamping it down, whether it's emotion or behavior or whatever, I'm like, you're using the energy of your body to take that tamp down, and I can imagine the pilot light in the solar plexus going dimmer in those moments of habituation. And then I can't remember exactly how you just said it, but it's like the dust, the film on the window got a little bit deeper, heavier. And so I got that relationship that you were saying through those images that we brought in, as to how we get in our own way, if you will, right? That it is about exploring those habitual ways that we get disconnected from ourselves. And we just gave the images of the window getting dirtier. And do I take one finger, or do I just wipe the whole thing clean, or do I really get into every nook and cranny, if you will, right? Excuse me. And I'm thinking about all the different ways that you can tell the story of that in your life, of how we are living our lives in these times where our resiliency comes from our willingness to take care of ourselves. To it was like the saying that I'd put in the conversation for today, that our determination dissolves the self-sabotage. That I heard another one of my teachers use that, and how profound it was for me in recognizing even the energy of the word determination. When I hear myself say it out loud, I can feel the solar plexus, that sense of how am I determined to live my life? And I was reading some information put out by someone else recently about this month, and how we're so kind of old pattern thinking about resolutions, New Year's resolutions, and I haven't operated in that in many years. But determination, that feels different to me, because that's coming from within me, and what my spark of life wants for myself, to learn and grow and find the magic. And resolutions feel like an external way of operating. And so what it's I've been steeping in the determination of how do I want to move forward in this year? What is my capacity and what do I need to grow in myself to have the experiences that I want for myself, that I'm more connected to life through creation flowing, as you're saying, and that I'm bringing forth my expression in alignment with my own um, personal is not the word, my own sacred being expressing itself, my own sovereign sense of who I am, and that any dirtying of the window with my thoughts or my emotions or my habits, that it's like my Irish friends would say, up with this I will not put. It's like that to reignite, I have to be clear in myself. What will I no longer allow in my life? And so for me, this time of year of reigniting that is getting that clarity, being determined to have that sense of clarity of I am, like we said as our introduction, I am a part of everything and everything's a part of me. And how am I living that? Am I really honestly, authentically in that relationship? Is that, yeah, go.
Yeah. Going a little bit back with the determination, there's a like my initial response to that word, it is that movement forward, like I'm determined, I'm gonna make it happen type of thing. So for me, there's a little bit of pressure with that word. So I change my relationship to the word. And like you brought in the sacredness, what is the sacredness that I am inviting in or joining with, or what is the movement toward life, which is another principle, and being in the I really all of the principles, everything's moving to the next greater whole. Um, Everything has a place. And for me, allowing myself to be in the space of everything has a place and being clear in the sacredness of what that means rather than the other end of like, well, that's, my stirb is okay because everything has a place. Or, and trying not to allow the mind to get me caught up in that other way of defining it, if you will, because that to me doesn't fuel my life. It doesn't keep that flame vibrant. It dims it because I'm, like using it as an excuse rather than being present with what is being present at the moment. And it's constantly moving in, moving out. Everything's reconfiguring to the next greater whole, and with life underneath it all, creation underneath it all. And I find for myself when my languaging can support that, it's sustainable, if you will, or I'm able to maintain that inner that inner pulse with, like, I can observe that inner pulse with creation much more I don't want to say loudly, but much more prominent, if you will.
Oh, okay.
Um, and I think I'll stop there because I'm starting to go into, like, I feel myself going into my head about it rather than in my center. Let that nectar flow in and inform me rather than, okay, I'm trying to get my point across.
Oh, okay. So I had that image of the dust coming up on the window, that's a habituated way that you notice yourself losing your connection to your life source. That
Well,
when,
it's yes, and
you
it's
know,
interesting because I've always said I hate to clean. I'm not a cleaner. And what a way for me to allow the dust to stay on, you know. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm pinging, 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 like having all these ahas. And it's like, let's like just today, I'm not gonna wipe the dust off. The dust is okay right there today. And maybe I'll just do a finger test or, I don't know.
oh my gosh,
But it's true. The thicker the film, the more the light is definitely dimmed. Or even if the light is vibrant, I'm not connecting 100% to the vibrant life. Because I believe when creation is within you, you're vibrant anyhow. So people might react to that vibrancy, but allowing your own being, your human being, to connect, that is a little bit more of a challenge for me.
uh, so staying in your own sacred connection.
Yeah.
And I brought the word sacred back in because I really felt the importance of how how each one of us is a unique expression of creation, and what brings us into our sacredness is maybe looks a little bit different for each one of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so to clean the window, to keep the pilot light lit, or to reignite is going to look and express in its own unique way.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings me to, here's a little bit of my story of wanting to reignite myself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it feels like this is the moment. So I have, as you know, I've been a practitioner of yoga and Tai Chi more recently, but I've been a practitioner for decades. And its movement is a part of how I do express my sacred connection with life. And what for me brings life enhancing experience forward. And I'm also going back to when I was a little girl, and I danced and I tumbled, and I was in an organic movement not called yoga at that time. And it just got a structure when I got older. The dance was a structure, and a very different kind of structure than yoga is. And I'm kind of fascinated with that. So there's the goofy me on the monkey bars, flipping around and doing. There's the me in the dance class structure of movement. There's me in the free flow yoga of movement. And with that whole thread through my life, I've also gone back to uncovering the movement of my relationship with food,
Mm-hmm.
and how food has been an expression. And I go back to different stories in the way my creative impulse to be curious about food and how we as a culture interact with food and how food interacts with us, that relationship. And how, as a little girl growing up, my mom was stressed, taking care of family and kids and just trying to do the daily routine. And so my little girl impulse to want to be in the kitchen wasn't supported. And then somewhere in my story around 10 or 12, I got an easy bake oven. And it gave me a place to express. And my dad, bless his soul, ate everything I ever made, right? And loved it. And I started reflecting on that this has been an impulse through my life too. How I'm sourced in the magic of food and how it's starting now at this point in time to come forward and express itself. And so I'm reigniting a passion, a force that has been moving through me my whole life in my personal way. And I'm reigniting, how do I express that from within into the world? And it's like, it's so fun. It's so fun for me to feel like the kid in me that is so curious about how food, how I'm in relationship to it, is now the kid in me is coming out and playing with food in a whole new way. And my pilot light is just like roaring with excitement for that. And I just wonder, for me, that's the sacredness of that connection. And I just wonder, how are we each looking in our lives in this moment in our own way? What are we looking for that brings the passion for what's life enhancing to each of us?
Mm. Hmm. Great question. For me, I'm not spending as much time as I would like, and it's in nature. Like everything that you were saying, I related to some degree. And my passion as a child was exploring and looking at all the little bugs and all the little critters out on my adventures on the farm I grew up on. And I would be gone for days, like not days, but all day, hours, up on the hill, underneath the road in the culvert, checking out all the catfish or what. I don't even know what was down there, but I would just spend the whole day with them. And I miss that. Like that would light me up because there was always a new mystery to unfold because you never knew what was going to be underneath that rock or sitting on a tree limb or what have you. And for me, being in the city, even though it's not like a big, huge city like New York City, but it's a city to me. It's not on a 100-acre farm with nobody around. Um, it's challenging because I don't necessarily create the time to invite that in. And it's interesting how, as you were talking, my like I can't wait for your cookbook to come out because I know you've always been a foodie for as long as I've known you. And I've never had a bad meal, and you've allowed me to eat things that I never thought I would eat, and I've liked them. So it's, I love how that your passion sparked a passion that I really kind of let fizzle out. I mean, it's there, but it's not present as much as I would like in my life. So thank you for like creating the space for that to come up. And music. I love music. So any, you know, I love music and movement. So that is always somewhere in my life. And I've done that my entire life too. Like instrument, you know, my whole family's been dancer. Like, you know, my grandparents met on a dance floor and they were married for like 78 years, you know, and our whole family were rhythmic people, you know, and not professionally trained by any stretch of the imagination, but man, my internal imagery can do what all those people are doing, that I'm like, I wish I could do that. I see myself doing it.
It's in the DNA.
I mean,
You
and
express it
that
through your
brings
chi
joy.
dancing.
Yeah, that's just that totally lights my pilot light.
You know, and somebody listening in, I just want to read what they've shared.
Mm-hmm.
Also, a tiny spark will still light a fire. To keep using the pilot light metaphor, which is magnificent. Thank you. And our tiny spark often makes a big difference.
Yeah.
It also certainly drives away the dark for as far as it reaches. Wow. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Like I got this image of the lighthouse.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as that light goes, it awakens into that space. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Wow.
And I totally received an image of like an ember that you would cup and hold in your hand, and just being in that, shining it like this little itty bitty thing, but it's so potent. It is so potent. And yay. I like, I'm like drinking
Yeah.
it up right now.
Well, and this idea that when you start a fire, if you just have little embers in there and you just kind of you can
Yep.
expand that ember, and yes, then you can have that roaring fire.
Yeah.
I love how the expansiveness of the pilot light is expressing itself in so many different ways. How do we, you know, I keep hearing all these signs or these songs in my head. Come on, baby, let my fire you. Or, you know, you're the light of my life. Or all these different songs are coming in.
Yeah. Well, and you know, when you said you to invite the ember to expand into something more, we both did it. You invited the breath of life to join it, right? So, wow, what a metaphor for what we're having a conversation about. And we all have the breath of life within us. And we can choose to light the fire and let it just radiate. You know, we all have that internal radiance that has the right to shine brightly, brightly.
And we have about 10 minutes left. And I'd love to kind of pick the brain of sacred practice a bit, of how we can look into who we are and see or have revealed in whatever way it shows up. What are the ways in which we clean the window off?
Mhm.
The breath for me is, yeah, that's the, like you said, the breath of life. That's for me a fundamental go-to that builds my resiliency
Mhm.
for staying connected to who I am, because breath is source moving through me.
Mhm.
But I'm just like, like what pops up for you because you threaded the habit aspect of it. What comes up for you that is this sense of ways in which determination dissolves those self-sabotage, those habit things? Is there something that stands out to you?
Um, a physical sacred practice for me is music, because music will help me to go deeper and connect more underneath the surface of things. And it also helps to um like bring joy, or like it helps me to shake things up so it can reconfigure itself into the joy aspect of it or the life enhancement aspect of it, rather than going down the rabbit hole aspect. And um usually I do headphones anymore, so it's all internal and very low volume because it's in my ears. But I would prefer like crank it, windows open, wind blowing through, like be with the outside and the inside, but just like no one would be offended by anything that I was playing or whatever. That to me is the essence of what I would love to be able to do 24/7 if I like needed it. But I'm in the city and we need to be a little respectful. So I do. I walk around with headphones on all day, pretty much. And it
I
keeps
heard,
me in the aliveness. It keeps me in
yeah,
with life, with creation. Yeah.
I heard the two words, crank it up, or three words, crank it up. And I'm like, that's the pilot light. Turn
Yeah.
it up, turn up the
Yeah.
light, baby.
Yeah.
And then it creates space.
Yeah.
And for me, that's another way of seeing the metaphor of it cleans off that window.
Yeah.
It gets the cobwebs out. So there's so many like really cool metaphors that have come up today to describe. And it's what cranks you up.
Yeah.
That's
And
really
it and I love that in the sharing and in the conversation of that, since we are all beautifully, uniquely different in our designs, it's being with another in the field when they are experiencing it. And while you might not have the potency because that's not the way you crank it up, but it's infectious. It's that way that life draws you toward other life. And wow, that whoo,
you
I want
know
to celebrate that.
and it brings me to, I have a little card with a quote on it that I keep on my desk here,
Mm-hmm.
and it says, what is it that you can't not do?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that's what I received that from a friend of mine last fall when it seemed like everything that I imagined that I was moving into just dissolved. No more. No, not happening. And so I spent the fall through the first of the year, kind of pondering, well, what's next? And I kept seeing this quote, what is it you can't not do? Enough, no more. Just, it's like that internal stop it. I'm done not having my light shine kind of thing. And I think for me, that's the way in which the reignite has legs now. And so if somebody out there is in that space of enough already, what is it you can't not do? Join, join us in the conversation of it. Share what it is you can't not do on our Facebook or YouTube chat line. What's reigniting you? What have you forgotten about? I didn't realize how the story of food was so integral to my being until the other variation that I was doing just went away. There was no, like you said, there was no way for me to crank it up and create some space to see what really wants to rise. So I just invite people to ask that question. What is it I can't not do? And we've got just a few minutes left. What is it you can't not do, Lori?
I can't not dance. I cannot not dance. And that is all the way from my childhood. And I'll add move to that. So it might not even be dance. It might be, like your quirky, like just that weird thing. You know what I do.
I have seen your
Yeah.
quirkiness. I have
I
experienced.
mean, I'll be having a serious conversation and I do something like that. And people look at me like, you, and I'm like, to me, that's like the aha, like I'm connected with the best thing out there, creation, and nothing's going to stop me at that point when I'm in that direct relationship with creation. And I'm like, and
and I when I see that rise in you, I feel the words of, don't take life so seriously.
yeah,
Come on, play, move, be in the joy of how life wants to move through you.
yeah,
And so I think that quirkiness, I think you ought to bring it on, crank it up and help people get their crank on.
I really do. I love being with people that don't think they have rhythm. I'm like, we all have rhythm. I'm going to help you find yours because I can move in all kinds of crazy ways.
Well, I'm going to be looking for how you bring forward to the world to crank it up and play in their rhythm if they want to. So I'll be looking for how you bring that forward this year. And we're in our final moments. So thank you, Lori, for a lovely conversation of what inspires us and sparks our light and reignites us. And it's been just a gift to be with you today and with all of the rest of you. Share with us what cranks you up and what gets you your juices flowing. And until next week, to be well and be resourced in life.